It wasn't even before midway through the first quarter that I went onto Patreon and posted a video of actual game footage of the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Los Angeles Chargers last night and explaining why they were so high on my defense rankings list this week. And then not long after that, it became very obvious that the Raiders were going to be a fantastic defensive play this week. They were number 4 on my list, and the reason I do this video on Friday is because I only give you guys the top 12 defense rankings list, and I need you guys to know who else is going to be startable and who else might be a good defense in a pinch for you if you can't have access to anybody in the top 12. So I do it every Friday. I am going through every single matchup and identifying the start and sit defenses for week 15 fantasy football. And I am one of the only fantasy football YouTubers who covers defense on a consistent weekly basis. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Let's go ahead and just dive right into it right now. So the first matchup, and by the way, 3 games on Saturday this week, starts out with Cincinnati at Minnesota. I think Cincinnati's defense is startable. Listen, it's not that the Cincinnati defense is some top elite defense, and it's not even that Minnesota's offense is one of the best to play. Things are kind of combining in the perfect force for me to be able to consider Cincinnati a good start this week, though. Cincinnati's their trajectory is up and to the right. The Cincinnati Bengals past several games look good offensively, and it has helped their defense. It helped them last week. And then you combine that with the Minnesota Vikings, who have not been able to move the ball the past 2 games. That's a problem. Now, they are making a quarterback change. They're taking out Josh Dobbs and putting in another backup quarterback. The bottom line is, you could think of this very similar to the Jets. The Jets are in quarterback limbo all year, right? This is exactly what Minnesota's experiencing right now. That's not good for any team, regardless of if you have Justin Jefferson or not, because, by the way, the Jets have good players too. So I think that the Bengals are just in a uniquely good spot this week. Nothing about their defense excites me. Nothing about their defense also disgusts me, but the matchup versus the falling Vikings is good. And then the Vikings defense, I can't do it because the Cincinnati Bengals offense is rolling and their defense has not looked that great this season. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Indianapolis Colts is the next matchup. I love the Colts defense always, but especially this week. And I say this every week, and some of you may be tired of hearing it. The way I look at the Colts defense is they are the perfect example of why NFL defense and how good you are in the NFL does not directly correlate to how you produce in fantasy football. The Colts give up plenty of yardage, plenty of points week by week. They just got a ton of points hung on them last week. But you know what? They got a defensive touchdown in that game that saved their week from being abysmal. And that's what they do every week. So if they can hold opponents to very few points, very few yardage, they're putting up a big week of fantasy football. Well, the thing about the Steelers, they don't put up points. In fact, they're not going to put up, I would be shocked to see them put up 300 yards with Mitch Trubisky. The Colts defense is a smash play this week. And then the Steelers defense, I think in a pinch, you can play them. I don't think the Steelers, if you just look at what they did the last 2 weeks, you're like, why would I even consider this? They lost to 2 straight 2-10 teams within a 5-day period. It's embarrassing for their franchise. But the Steelers defense is similar to the Colts in a lot of ways, where they take the ball away from you and they let a lot of stuff go on as far as yardage and points on the board for them, but they get out to your quarterback as well. So I think the Steelers in a pinch are an option. I would not say go out of your way and play the Steelers defense though. The Denver Broncos at the Detroit Lions here. And I got to tell you this, like, if it was early in the season, right, and we were discussing the Broncos at the Lions, like, this is why it's important to look at fantasy football in terms of 4 quarters in a season. Because this would have been a joke. Like, having the Broncos anywhere near starter territory as a defense against the Lions would have been a joke. It's similar to what we just discussed with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Minnesota Vikings. The Cincinnati Bengals are in the right direction. The Vikings are in the wrong direction. Well, the Broncos are in the right direction, and the Lions, I don't think they're necessarily going down as hard as Minnesota, but they're not heading in the right direction right now. It looks like they may have peaked, and I think they're great. I love their players, and I love their coach. But there's no question that they're in a slump right now. Jared Goff looks like he's in a slump. So Denver's defense, as good as they've been, I think there's a shot they could take advantage, maybe get a couple turnovers, and make themselves a decent defensive play. Again, not a must-start defense, did not crack my top 12, but I think that Denver's defense can be played. And then Detroit Lions defense, like, honestly, it really doesn't even matter the matchup. Unless they're playing like Carolina or the Jets on a bad week or the Patriots, I can't consider playing the Lions defense. They've been abysmal lately. They can't stop anybody. So no way on the Lions defense. The New York Giants at the New Orleans Saints. And the New Orleans Saints, I do think is a decent start again this week. Now, last week, they exceeded my expectations. They got a defensive touchdown last week, put them over the top. It helped me advance in the fantasy football playoffs because I played them. Luckily, because I didn't have access to the Texans. So, the New York Giants, I think, do pose a bigger, worse matchup threat for the Saints this week because obviously they played the Panthers last week. That's a massive deal, and that can't be overlooked. So when I see that naturally some people like to start a defense that did so well for them the week prior, we can't have that mentality moving forward. I don't think that the Saints are going to be a bad play this week. That's why they're in start territory, but I do think it is worth questioning, should I start them or should I start the Colts defense? Or should I start the Falcons defense, who we'll talk about in a bit? It's worth questioning for sure. The Saints are not bulletproof this week, I don't think. And that's based on the Giants' performance. And I don't have them as a flexible defense. They're kind of right outside that territory, though. The Saints, it's not because the Giants' defense is great. It's not. The Saints' offense, though, is a train wreck right now. They're a train wreck. If they didn't have so much talent, and it wasn't in New Orleans, I could see a really strong case be made by me, probably by me, that the Giants defense would be playable. This is not the situation, though. We're not in that situation where I'm like, the Saints are down bad with all kinds of weapons missing, and it's in New York. We're not in that situation here. So I can't say to start the Giants defense this week. The Bears at the Browns here. Next matchup. The Bears and the Browns, I think, are both very, very playable. Now, they have really evened out as far as the rankings. Earlier in the week, they were ranked a couple spots apart. Now they've really tightened up. And so the Bears, I think, are a good defense for sure. They've been very impressive the past several weeks. I think they're on the right trajectory. And I really do think that they're fighting for pride at this point. I think they're fighting for pride. And they've already got the number one pick from the Panthers. So it's not like they're going down the tubes and tanking right now. And I think that Cleveland, as well as they've looked offensively the past several weeks with Flacco, they're not some bulletproof defense. I mean, think of all the quarterbacks this year who have started hot as a backup and then fizzled out. Josh Dobbs. We might see that with Jake Browning. Who knows? But I don't know if we're going to see too many points from the Browns this week. In bad weather, I just don't think it's going to be a high upside game, and could be several turnovers there. I like the Bears defense this week, and I also like the Browns defense, because even though the Bears have been scoring more points and they look better offensively, this is a situation where it's like Justin Fields still turns the ball over. He is still a turnover-prone guy. I like him, but he's turnover-prone. That's just the reality here. And the Browns defense has been excellent in fantasy football. So both these defenses, I definitely would start both of them. And again, the rankings have changed on these two defenses. And if you want to see daily rankings updates, if you are a supporter through Patreon, you will see almost daily updates during the season of fantasy football rankings. The Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, I'm going to tell you to start the Falcons. I mean, anybody who plays the Panthers is going to be in starter territory. And a couple weeks ago, the Falcons did well, against the Panthers the first time. So the Falcons defense, I've got no issue telling you to start them. I don't like the Falcons defense whatsoever. I don't think they're a very good fantasy defense. I just don't think they're a very good NFL defense. But they're playing the Panthers. I mean, that's just where we're at. The Panthers are awful. Watching that team, they look awful. Like, no redeeming value whatsoever. Bryce Young has been the rookie season from hell. It's been awful. And then the Panthers defense, obviously, I can't endorse starting them, regardless of what matchup is. Tampa Bay at Green Bay. I can't start either one of these. And I can't tell my audience to start either one of these either. Listen, the Packers and the Buccaneers, not only did the Packers totally disappoint me last week, but they're just, this is the reason they did not crack my top 12 fantasy football playoff defense rankings. They're just not very good. So even in a good matchup last week, they still couldn't get it done. And the Giants may be better than we think. They're well coached. Maybe their offense is starting to pull it together. But Tampa Bay's got weapons too. So it's not like they're just getting some break this week as opposed to what they had last week. And the Buccaneers defense, Green Bay's got offensive talent too. And the Bucs defense has been equally almost as bad as the Packers. I can't advise starting either one of these defenses. The New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins this week. Start the Dolphins. Not only ride the wave of how good the Dolphins have been lately defensively, aside from last week against the Titans, but also just put yourself in a situation where it's like, yes, last week was last week. Miami was not good, and the Jets overperformed by everybody's metric by like 100 times, right? And Zach Wilson had the game of his life. Do you really think it's going to happen again? Are we convinced all of a sudden that Zach Wilson has found this new Zach Wilson and he's all of a sudden going to be a great player? I am certainly not, and I am not advising my audience to, to go along with that. I just don't think that's the case, right? And the Dolphins defense, the first time they played the Jets, it was an excellent play. Similar to what the Raiders were on Thursday night. So, yes, play the Dolphins defense. And the Jets defense were just outside of in a pinch flex territory. I can't advise it, though, because of the fact they're playing the Dolphins in Miami. I don't think it's going to be good. And the Jets are always going to be in consideration for me every week because their defense is very good. But this week against the Dolphins, I can't advise it, to be honest with you. The Kansas City Chiefs at the New England Patriots. The Chiefs defense is a big-time risk and a big-time reward play. Now, obviously, the Chiefs were very highly ranked in my rankings this week. And I understand it's a risk. And I understand it's also very hard to put trust in their defense. And you can add on that the Patriots looked better offensively just a week ago. I understand that. What it comes down to for me is they're playing the Patriots. They outmatched the Patriots by a lot, and I think that defense is going to come in ready to go. I think they're feeling disrespected, and they're going to want to make a big victory to really a really resounding victory for everybody to listen to. So, it's got risk to it, but I'm playing the Chiefs defense in a couple of my own leagues, and I do advise my audience in a lot of situations to play them as well. And the Patriots defense, they're near the bottom. I can't tell you guys to play the Patriots defense. Even with Kansas City's offensive struggles lately, the Patriots are just so outmatched in this matchup. Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans here. I know I'm, there's a lot of people who are not going to agree with this, and I understand why. But I've got the Tennessee Titans to start with their defense. The Titans are playing a weak Texans defense. A weak Texans offense, I'm sorry. Look, just before filming this video, CJ Stroud ruled doubtful. He's not playing. And the best weapon in that offense, Nico Collins, he's out too. So what do they have? Davis Mills running at quarterback, Noah Brown, Robert Woods, John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson at wide receiver, and then you've got the inefficient, inept run offense. Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary. Just look back to last year and see how the Texans played with Mills. It's not going to work. So in a divisional matchup, a lot of things can happen here. I think a lot of good things are going to happen for the Titans this week. And not only do I think they're going to be a good defensive play, I think they win the game, actually. And then the Texans here, I just think that, like I said, without CJ Stroud, this defense is going to be on the field a lot of the game. So I can't endorse starting the Texans defense this week. Even against a bad offense, which Tennessee is, I can't endorse this one this week. San Francisco at Arizona. It's a division matchup. I don't care. The 49ers defense is top tier to me this week. They're rolling. They're beating teams to a pulp right now. They're such bullies. Like, they're old school defense matched with new school defense. I mean, they've got speed and they've got aggression. It's the perfect storm. They're extremely physical. And I think it's going to be too much. It's going to outmatch the Cardinals. And I would never advise to play the Cardinals defense, especially against a offense with Brock Purdy, who is, if the NFL is honest, in MVP contention with Dak. Christian McCaffrey, excellent this year. Deebo Samuel, red hot. Ayuk, always putting up good games. Kittle, red hot. No way I'm telling you to play the Cardinals defense. Commanders at the Rams. I've got questions on the Rams defense this week, and really, again, this is why it's good to make this video, to discuss the Rams defense. The Rams defense, I do think, is playable in a pinch. The Commanders are down Brian Robinson, right? They just look worse every week. There's two reasons why I don't consider them must start, though. Number one, the Commanders offense could score points and get yards. Sam Howell is hot and cold, but he can get hot. And when he does get hot, he can toss 4 touchdowns, right? So that's reason number one. Reason number two is also because the Rams defense is just simply not a good fantasy defense. It feels like I kind of have to fight this one every week. I have a lot of people always kind of ask me about the Rams defense. The Rams defense, if you look at what they've done this year in fantasy, it's awful. It's near the bottom. They've been terrible defensively in fantasy football. So no, I can't hop on board with this one as a must start. Flexible, in a pinch, can play them, but not unless you don't have access to anyone in the top 12. And even defenses like the Broncos, I would play over them. I would play the Steelers over them. So they're kind of a last resort option for me, just because I don't think their defense is very good, and because the Commanders can score points. Not saying they will, but they certainly can. And Commanders defense, no way you consider playing them. Their defense is atrocious in fantasy, and the Rams are red hot offensively. No way I could tell you guys to play them. Dallas Cowboys at the Buffalo Bills. The Dallas Cowboys are in a pinch. And again, I would play the Cowboys over the Rams because the Cowboys can do a lot. Like, this is something I kind of have to discuss every week as well, and I'm happy to do it because I do think the Cowboys defense is worth rostering right now. Their schedule doesn't get easier from here. The Bills defense is kind of just, part of their tough playoff schedule. But the Cowboys defense is so elite in fantasy football. The only defense averaging more than 11 fantasy points per game. Heading into week 15, that's outrageous. Not many defenses in the past 5 years can do that. They're so great at getting turnovers. They're so great at stopping you from running. They're so great at, sacking the quarterback. Like, they do everything that you want from a fantasy defense. And on top of that, the Bills offense, while they have been more efficient, I would say, they're still Josh Allen dependent. And Josh Allen makes mistakes. He turns the ball over. There's a reason he has led the league in interceptions past several years. Josh Allen turns the ball over. So if Dallas can get a couple turnovers, even if they give up 24 points, 27 points, if they get 3 turnovers, they're going to even out to have a decent week. And that's why they're in a pinch flexible. And the Bills defense, I love them. I think they're a great play for next week. The Cowboys offense is just too hot right now. I mean, they're running almost similarly to the 49ers. I can't advise anyone playing against the Cowboys to start that defense. So I love the Bills defense, but I can't advise my audience to play them this week. Baltimore Ravens at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Sunday night game. Baltimore is definitely startable. I don't think that they're the best play. Like, Jacksonville, I need to kind of leave margin for error for them. It's similar to the Commanders in a way, because the Jaguars have all kinds of talent, more than the Commanders, obviously. Their quarterback's better and their weapons are better. But they're uncertain right now too. You know, there's not a lot of consistency in that offense. And the Ravens defense is elite. I mean, they're the second best defense as far as fantasy points per game in fantasy football. So they're a great defense, fantasy football. Their matchup is not the worst. It's not ideal. So they're kind of border on must start and border in a pinch territory. I would start the Ravens over, about 80% of the league though. And then the Jags defense, no way. Their defense has been horrific the past several weeks in fantasy, and they've got a terrible matchup here. So no way. Philadelphia Eagles at the Seattle Seahawks, the last matchup. Philadelphia, I think you could play in a pinch. Would I prefer them over the Rams? I would. Would I prefer them over the Cowboys? I wouldn't. I would play the Cowboys defense. But I do think that the Eagles defense can be played because, listen, as bad as the Eagles have looked the past 2 weeks, remember who they've played. The 49ers and the Cowboys. And that's no excuse because they should be up there in that competition. I've said it over the weeks as well. They look tired. They just look like they're worn down. Well, the good thing for them this week is that the Seahawks look very similar. They've got a lot of talent too. They look like they're heading in the wrong direction though. So I don't think that the Seahawks are some elite matchup that you need to avoid. I think you could play the Eagles defense over a lot of defenses in the league. But the Seahawks, no way. No way I'm playing the Seahawks defense. The Eagles offense, I think, could be a get-right week for them. And so there's no way I could advise my audience to play the Seahawks defense. So let me know what questions you need answered for Week 15 fantasy football in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 12 defense rankings and exactly where they ranked this week, click on this video right here.